Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Rico 12 is dedicated to exploring the common threads of addiction, sharing tools, and offering hope from those walking a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences, demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. No matter how alcoholism manifests in our lives, there is a common solution. At least that's my experience. This is Rico 12 speaker meeting number 320. Thank you for joining us live or on the recording later. Today's speaker is Stan P., and he will be discussing meetings, Stepwork, and sponsorship, and I look forward to hearing his message here shortly. But first, a few quick announcements. Rico 12 offers a variety of recovery resources, including podcasts and social media communities. To explore more, visit www.rico12.com. That's RECO12.com, and check the chat and the show notes for links. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this mission. Thank you to all of our spearhead donors, past and present. This week, we'd like to thank Natty. Thank you so much for your support this week. It truly does make a difference, not only financially, but word of mouth. To contribute, visit rico12.com/support. Check the links in the show notes or in the chat for one-time or monthly donation options. Every bit of support makes a difference and helps us share this message of recovery with others throughout the world. And I'm grateful to have people from all over the world here. All right. Each week, we receive light and inspiration from our speakers. Their experiences bring hope, meaning, worth, and growth to us, the listeners. Now I'm going to welcome today's speaker, Stan P., and share just a little bit more about him. Stan P. from Anchorage, Alaska, is sober in SA since July 9th, 2018. He's also a grateful S-Anon member since April 28th of 2021, and he's currently sponsoring 3 in SA and 1 in S-Anon, and I'm excited to hear from you, Stan. Take it away. The floor is...
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, my name is Stan P., Anchorage, Alaska, grateful member of SA and S-Anon. I was born and raised up here in Alaska, and my SA journey kind of starts off with when I was 8 years old, I was exposed to pornography, and then when I was 11, started masturbation and fantasy. So, kind of fast forwarding to what it was like. I felt like I had felt relatively good childhood. My dad was an alcoholic. And then my mom was fairly distant, but, she was a stay-at-home mom. And for me, didn't date anybody up through high school and started dating in college. By that time, I just considered masturbation as a normal thing, didn't have a real faith tradition, and was just kind of left to my own devices. And, pornography, masturbation became a kind of a constant thing. Eventually I found saving faith in 2011, got rid of all my pornography, but continued to struggle in my marriage and didn't really know, what the root causes were. I just figured that my wife had a little bit of issues, and, I was, just who I was, but I was, a very committed person and dedicated, and just continued to go through life. What eventually happened is that my wife cut me off from my fixation, a sex fixation, a fetish, and I went to start punishing her for that. And we had no physical contact of any type for 16 months. The first 4 months we were in the same bed, but I eventually moved to sleep on the couch. And then for the next 12 months, I was sleeping on the couch and wasn't trying to work on it. I was just trying to wait her out. Most of my time, I was using money as the kind of the glue to keep the relationship together. So we were going through a very expensive house remodel. It was very stressful. And what happened is that my wife eventually cheated on me, and I didn't know that it had happened. One day she called me from work and asked me to come home to help her with the home remodel. So I came home, and she said, "We need to talk." And I was like, in my mind, I was like, darn right we need to talk. They're like, "We haven't done anything for 16 months, and I've been waiting you out." I was going to continue to keep waiting her out, but eventually she suggested we go to marriage counseling. So I said, "Yeah, let's go to marriage counseling." And at that point, the marriage was in real shambles and didn't know what I was going to be doing about it. So middle of June 2018, went to first counseling session of marriage counseling, and during that marriage counseling session, the counselor asked me, "So Stan, tell me about yourself." And I heard this still small voice just say, "Open up, just start telling them things." And I was like, okay. And I just started telling them stuff about my childhood and issues with my dad and my mom and with my current wife. And, we had been together, 20 years at that point. I think married for about 17 and a half. So she was very quiet during the entire marriage counseling session. And I was just opening up, crying, just saying how bad I was. The next day, we went to another session. He called it an emergency session. So second day of the marriage counseling, he asked me about my sex life. And I said, I look at pornography, I masturbate, and I've ever been with this woman. What's the big deal? He said, I suggest you go to SA. And I go, what's SA? Whatever, Ben. I'll go to whatever you want me to do to go save my marriage. So it took about 3 weeks before an SA member contacted me. But in the interim there, I hit my knees and I prayed. I said, God, take away this pornography obsession. This is going to destroy my marriage. And I don't want it anymore. And that was at the end of June 2018. And was contacted by an SA member and scheduled to go to a meeting. I masturbated for the last time just thinking about my wife on July 8th. And the next day I went to a marriage counseling session, and my the counselor, just me on one-on-one, he said, "You can't even do that." And I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" And so thankfully 2 days later on July 11th, I went to my first SA meeting on a Thursday night meeting here in Anchorage, Alaska. And when the white book was presented to me, it blew my mind. I'm like, that's exactly how I think. How do you guys know how I think about this kind of stuff? And I was, at that point, I wanted sobriety. That was the thing I wanted more than life itself. I was like, I want what you guys are offering in Sexaholics Anonymous. I want sobriety by the White Book definition. So as I was going, talking about my topics here, start with meetings. So how that all started. So I was going to face-to-face meetings here in Anchorage. They actually, at that point in time, they had meetings 6 days a week, every day except Sunday, face-to-face. And on some days they had 2 meetings. So I started going to meetings, and I was working a full-time job. I had 4 kids, and it was hard for me. The job I work in the oil and gas industry, and I was working a very demanding job. So it was hard to get to a lot of meetings. And one day, it was less than a month into recovery, I just said, you know what? I'm frustrated. Like, there's not enough resources for me. I need more meetings. I need more things. And a member threw me a laminated card, like a piece of paper with a list of all the SA phone meetings. And I was like, SA phone meetings? I'm like, jackpot. So that was in August of 2018. And at that point, what I started doing is I started going to phone meetings just as if they were like my lifeline. And I would call into as many as 4 phone meetings a day. It was just very critical. And I started going through all kinds of things. I went through panic attacks, just the scales and the shell started coming off, and I was kind of exposed, to the environment, and I was just not in a good place. And what I did with the phone meetings is I just started reaching out to people. I'd hang out in the parking lot. I'd collect phone numbers. I'd start contacting people. And eventually I got a temporary sponsor here in Anchorage, Alaska, and started working the steps with him. And I eventually became, more involved with the phone meetings, where I actually would run some of the phone meetings and just participate in those in their business meetings, and did the daily sobriety renewal. That was at 4 p.m. Eastern time, which was noon my time here in Alaska, and got more and more involved with those meetings. The face-to-face meetings, I was usually sticking to 1 to 2 meetings a week. I also started trying adult children of alcoholics. I believe that was in October of 2018. And I would go to a few meetings of those. And eventually one day I came home, and my wife told me, said, if you need to drop one of those, like you have responsibilities in your home. So feeling threatened that my marriage was, under duress, I capitulated and I said, okay, I'll just focus on SA. Eventually what happened is that me and my wife separated. I was gone for 6 weeks. We eventually, I was up on the North Slope, and I came back, and she said, hey, I'd like to, start getting back together. And by the way, I did cheat on you. And that was really shocking to me, really jacked me up. I went to a lot of shock. Eventually we got back together. My sponsor at the time suggested we did not have sex. Eventually, she pressured me enough into I gave in. I felt a lot of shame about that, and I pretty much just slunk away from my sponsor, just kind of like going like, yeah, I don't feel good about what I did, and oh my gosh, like. So in March of 2019, I pretty much walked away from the program, but I wanted to stay sober. So what I did is I went to the occasional phone meeting for the next 9 months and saw my life continue to fall apart. At first, I didn't see it, but then it became very clear at the end of August of 2019. My wife no longer wanted to have sex, and I could feel this giant curtain come down. I was like, I need to get back to the program. I procrastinated for a while, but I went back on December 7th, 2019, my Pearl Harbor Day for me. Went to a Saturday meeting. There was about 20 plus people there at the meeting. I was there searching for a sponsor, and two gentlemen raised their hands for sponsorship towards the end of the meeting. I picked the one, and I just told the guy, I said, dude, I'm done. I can't, like life's not really worth living right now if I don't just work this program. So I followed his suggestions. I started working the steps. I called him every day except twice. One time was after midnight, and another day I think I just forgot. After a year and a half, I was calling him every day, leaving voicemails, and working the steps, and going to meetings, and saw the blessings that came a part of that. And when COVID hit in the middle of March of 2020, I still went to face-to-face meetings here in Anchorage at a place that's called Dry Dock, and I was just like, I'm desperate. Like I at that point, my marriage was yet again falling apart, and I was desperate to just continue to keep going to meetings. My former grand sponsor, Dennis T here in Alaska, which I see, I think he's on the meeting. He started a Zoom meeting that was on Mondays and Thursdays, and it still goes on today, 6:30 a.m. Alaska time, so 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And I started going to that meeting, and I started meeting all kinds of people from all over the world. And then somebody said, hey, have you ever been on the Barcelona meeting? I go, no, what's that? I go, oh, they have these great speakers and whatnot. It's twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays. And I was like, okay. So I started doing those Zoom meetings. And eventually, Zoom became kind of the preference over the phone meetings. And today, where I'm at with the meetings, Zoom meetings, I go to a replete amount of them. I go to many different Zoom meetings in SA, and it helps to supplement, what I do to do a continual 90 and 90. And I've met a lot of these people, and I've met a lot of these people at conferences as well. And I can tell you, it's amazing to actually meet these people in real life, and to see them on a regular basis. It's just wonderful and amazing. And I consider Zoom a very powerful tool when it comes to meetings. And so eventually I finished the 12 steps May of 2021 in SA, and my sponsor says, okay, you're ready to move on and do other things. And I'd been pressing him to say, there's another part of my life that's not getting addressed. And he's like, yeah, that's your Essanon side. And I said, yeah, I still want to work in that. So what happened is my wife was, again, cheating on me, and I got really pissed, and I was heading towards divorce. I was getting really angry about it. And there were some other things she was doing that I found really objectionable. So eventually I reached out to a member whose his wife is in SA, and he's in Essanon. And I started talking with him, and I was like, you know what? I think this Essanon thing for me is going to work. And he said, yeah, we have a men's Essanon group. It's all Zoom. And it'd be great to have you on. So I joined that, my first meeting, April 28th, 2021. And I knew right from the first meeting, I was like, this is great. I want to join this group. I'm going to work the program, and it's going to work for me. And a few weeks into it, my sponsor chose me, and I was like, that's not how we work in SA. He's like, well, I've been given you're going to be my sponsee, and you're going to work under me. So my sponsor is Levi H in Nebraska, and I've been working with him ever since. And then he eventually, I lost my SA sponsor because he lost his sobriety and couldn't. He kept losing it and was no longer going to have any other sponsees underneath him. So I asked my Essanon sponsor, said, "Hey, you're an SA as well. Can you be my sponsor as well?" So he became my SA and Essanon sponsor, and that was towards the end of the summer of 2021. And I've had that same sponsor ever since. Worked the programs, meetings in Essanon have all been Zoom, and it's a great fellowship. It's really wonderful. We'll have mixed gendered meetings as well, and met a lot of the people also at conferences. I've gone to Sarasota, I've gone to Kansas City and Wichita, and also gone to the Los Angeles International Convention last year. So moving on to the step work. Um, in SA, the step work really helped expose a lot of the garbage in my life and just the things that were blocking me off from God. It took me 5.5 months of working step 4 very diligently on a regular basis just to kind of really cut through the jungle effectively of just my own self will and all the garbage and all the resentment I had. I had tons of resentment towards people of all different types. Didn't matter. All kinds of family members, friends, school chums, business associates, government organizations, military, whatever it was, religious organizations. I just was just like, I want it all out of me. I'm like, this, it's not worth me holding on to this. So I'm going to let it go all out of me. And then I had over 100 fears. I was very fear based in a lot of my decision making. So I just put my head down and said I wanted to do it. And when I sat down my sponsor for my step 5, we spent the whole day together. And I think it was either between 4 to 6 hours for me to divulge all my step 5 work. And it was amazing. I'm telling you, like, that was as freeing as I could ever imagine to get. Step 6 and 7 have been a little bit harder for me, wanting to get rid of my character defects. Some of them are going like, but they're pretty good. They work really well. And I've had to say, yeah, you know what? I've had to get rid of those and just continuously keep working them. So eventually, steps 8 and 9 were awesome. I made amends to a grocery store that I'd stole some baseball cards from, and that was an amazing experience. And then I made amends to my dog, and that was an amazing experience. Makes me want to cry right now just thinking about it, because I really did see that pink cloud after that. And then steps 10, 11, and 12 really opened me up to kind of seeing how to live life on a daily basis. So that was an amazing thing to kind of see of how to take personal inventory, how to pray to God and talk with Him, and then also pray, meditation, how to listen to God, and then 12, how to reach out to others and help others. So after I started working the steps in Essanon in May of 2021, and simultaneously I started trying to get sponsees in SA. And my experience with sponsorship in SA is I had just failure after failure after failures. People that didn't want to stay in the program, that just would ghost me, wouldn't keep working the program. And it took a while before anybody actually ever had any traction to want to stick with me and actually want to work the program. But eventually, now today I've got 3 consistent sponsees that I've been working with. And that's been amazing. One sponsee has finished step 12. Another sponsee has finished step 11. And then another sponsee, he's already worked the program, but he's working, just ironically, I used to be his temporary sponsee, and now he's my sponsee. And he's reworking step 4. And we have roughly the same amount of sobriety. He has a few more months of sobriety than I do, but his sponsor passed away over a year ago. So it's been an amazing experience working with somebody else like that. And then in Essanon, as I worked the steps there, I got to use a lot of the same stuff I had in from my SA sponsorship, but my SA step work. But I used the Essanon literature, and it was great. I just roughly would get done with a step a month. That was my target, and I achieved it, and it was great and wonderful. I got done doing the steps in Essanon, and then I said, what's next? And my sponsor said, well, they have literature in Essanon that has the traditions. And I was like, let's do it. Let's work the traditions. So I worked the traditions in Essanon and worked through those workbooks and spent about a little over a year working on the traditions. In the same time, took on other sponsees in SA and Essanon, lots of failures, lots of stop starts, not a lot of consistency there. And eventually I just said, you know what, like I talked to many people in the program and said, yeah, just expect, you're not going to have a lot of people that are going to want to stick to it. And that's their issue. So I said, yeah, I'm just going to keep working with my sponsees, keep taking their phone calls, work the steps with them if they want to. And if they don't want to, then just let them kind of move on. So I worked through the traditions. And at the same time, I was part of my service work. I was the treasurer for my SA home group here in Alaska. That was my main kind of way of providing service, was as the treasurer. I actually served that for 3 consecutive years. And then thankfully I got that to go off to one of my sponsees after me, and then another one of my sponsees after that. So one of my sponsees is currently the treasurer for our SA Alaska home group. And I also was looking at getting involved in the different regional conventions. So the first one I got involved with was the Sarasota conference, the first one that took place in February of 2022. So I helped plan that both from the SA and the S&On side, and that was an amazing experience. And then eventually I went to Wichita for the first time. The last time that the North Midwest Region Conference was held in Wichita before it moved to Kansas City. I participated in that group, and then I started helping to plan for the upcoming SAS International Convention in Dallas. So I joined that committee back in September of 2023, and I've been working to help with the planning for the upcoming international convention in Dallas. And I've been definitely staying involved with lots of service opportunities when it comes to different Zoom groups, as far as being a speaker or serving at meetings. With Essen right now, what I do for meeting frequency is I try to target, for my 90 and 90 is roughly 4 SA meetings a week and 3 S&On. That's my general target for the week, but I keep it really flexible because I have a lot of different opportunities for meetings. Being here in Alaska, most of my meetings, since I'm 4 hours behind Eastern time, I've got most of my meetings would be considered evening meetings by other groups. And what I found with those groups is one of the meetings I really started going to heavily was the SA Bozos on the Bus. The timeline was based at Singapore. So for me, it's currently at 8:50 p.m. or 12:50 a.m. Eastern time. And it has a complete international flair to it. It's got people that are waking up in Europe, and there's people in Eastern Asia that are in the middle of the afternoon. And I really love that meeting. I started going to that meeting almost every single day for, I think back at the end of 2022. And I actually got to meet a bunch of those people face to face in Los Angeles. And it was really awesome. I also, for service work, and I also I became part of the alternate assembly delegate in SA. That was in June of 2023, right before the Poland convention. And I've been serving there in the Northwest region as an alternate assembly delegate since that time. And I've served at the LA convention, and I've been going to quarterly meetings of the GDA, General Delegate Assembly for SA. And I serve on a handful of committees. One is the RAC committee, the Regional Alignment Committee, and the other one is the ICC, the International Conferences Committee. So I try to stay pretty plugged into all the upcoming international conventions of SAS-Anon, and looking to continue to keep being of service there. One thing, after I got done doing the tradition work of S-Anon, is I went back to working the steps of SA. And I've actually worked that through, a second time. I finished doing the SA steps a second time. I found that would be a very helpful exercise to kind of take care of any recent things that have been going on. I did get divorced in November of 2021, and there's been a lot of wreckage left over from that. I'm the one that filed for divorce. I'm grateful I got out of the relationship. It was very toxic. I've had a lot of time to learn about it. But there was a lot of leftover loose ends. Like I said, I have 4 kids. Thankfully, 2 of them are already adults. The third one will be 18 here in June, and my youngest is 10. So I found that it was very toxic to kind of maintain a relationship with my ex-wife and just not have it just be just a business relationship. So thankfully, over the last year and a half, I've really tried to be intentional about making sure that relationship stays that, and it's worked out really well. So a lot of my step work originally was based off of my issues with my ex-wife. And thankfully today I don't have to deal with that as much. So once I finished working the steps in SA, then in S-Anon, then in SA a second time, I've moved on. Today, what I do is I'm working on the concepts in SA, and I'm doing that with my sponsor by reading the SA service manual. So we go over the SA service manual once every 2 weeks, and we read a handful of pages, and we talk and discuss about what it means to us, our experience with it, and different opportunities that could potentially come up in the future. So with the last 5 minutes, I'll just kind of wrap up kind of where I'm at today and kind of what I'm looking at doing within my 12 steps recovery. So as mentioned before, I've got 3 SA sponsees and 1 S-Non sponsee. I found about 4 to 5 sponsees is about my max. I did get remarried in February of 2023. So that's been a great marriage, and did do some sober dating. So that's one thing that I was really hesitant about wanting to do is the sober dating. I did not like the prospects of it. I didn't like the danger of it because I really did not want to lose my SA sobriety. But was able to continue to maintain my recovery, work my program at the same time, continue to do a 90 and 90, continue to sponsor people, keep going to different regional and international convention events. And so where I'm going today, so I'm going to Kansas City here in the middle of April for that regional convention. 2 weeks later, I'm going to be going to Minnesota for an SASN marathon, and I'll be one of the featured speakers talking about sober dating in SA. And I've also talked about sober dating Essanon also at the LA convention. And then I'll be going to International Convention in Dallas at the end of July. And I'll also be planning to go to Kansas City in October as well. So keep myself busy, but try to maintain balance. And that's one key thing I've done with my marriage, with my job, with my kids. Because one of the things I do with my kids is I've actually homeschooled most of my kids for the last 11 years. My oldest son, he did it all for high school. My two middle children, my daughter and my middle son, they both did it for junior high and high school. And then my youngest, he started doing it at kindergarten. And I can tell you that was really stressful, trying to work a program, trying to homeschool kids, getting out of a divorce, lots of stuff. So I recognize I have to try to not overload myself and find balance in my life. And what I do with SA and Essanon is try to find that balance and not go too far into one or too far into the other. If something's going on where I feel betrayal trauma or I'm feeling like I want to fix, manage, or control somebody, that's generally an Essanon related thing I need to address and work the principles of that program. If I'm getting lustful or getting really selfish, that's usually an SA side. And so generally try to throw myself into being of service to others and trying to help people. So it's been an amazing journey. I've looked at the possibility of going back to ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. Right now, I don't see that fitting into my current schedule. I do try to set goals for myself. Reasonable goals that I can achieve for the year and not try to overload myself and make things too difficult to happen and to cause stress in my life. One of the great topics in when it comes to Essanon was HALTS, and I like to add the O at the end of that. So it's hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick, stressed, or overwhelmed. If I get into any too much of those, I need to find balance and I need to get myself out of that. I recently, I've been just lots of different things have been going on in my life, and it's been amazing. But I've found that stress levels were starting to rise, so I found ways to make sure I don't get myself creating more problems. Because one great thing I've learned from the program is if I put in good effort, God's in charge of the outcome, and so it's all about my effort. And I try to talk that to my sponsees as well: is put in good effort and trust that God will take care of the outcome. And don't try to force things to happen. It's continue putting good effort, when it working, on sobriety, don't lust after things. And if you do, surrender it, get rid of it, let it go, don't hold on to it. And the same thing applies for Essanon. Don't become obsessed or fixated on something. If you're really spun up about somebody, pray for them and do the next right action, whatever that action may be. So it's a simple program, but it's not easy. But I found that I had to have both sides worked on, because I think it was about 6 months into working with my sponsor. I worked the actual 12 steps in SA. Was that I said, man, something's not being addressed in my life. He goes, oh yeah, that's your anon side. I said, yeah, what is that? I want that fixed. I want that taken care of. And it's been two amazing programs. It's really helped me in my life to look at people differently, to treat people differently, and also just to helped me to change how I interact with God and how I perceive God and how I live my life. So I'm very blessed today. I have an amazing wife. I have amazing kids, amazing coworkers, amazing people in 12-step recovery, SA and Essanon. And I'm really grateful to be here at RICO 12 for the first time, and looking forward to another Sober 24 in SA and Essanon. And with all pass, thanks.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on RICO 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stan. Really appreciate your share there. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. I've written down several questions also. Before I get into that, though, and to remind our live audience, if you have a question for Stan, please direct message that to me in the chat. If you want to keep your name out of it, and I just say an anonymous question, just let me know that with an anonymous note, and I will get there. But before I get to the questions from our live audience, I have a question for you. If you could... You talked about you didn't want to lose your SA sobriety. You really the SA definition of sobriety. Can you share with us what the SA definition of sobriety is, so that we can start from that baseline?
Yeah, the SA sobriety definition is no sex with self or with partners other than the spouse, and the spouse is the relationship is either between a man and a woman in a relationship.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So we've set that baseline with SA. So. Basically, one of the questions that came in, I think, and I wrote this question down also, an anonymous question. You talked about sober dating. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and feels like and how you address that in your experience?
Yeah. So sober dating, effectively, when I recognize one of my issues was that I wanted to stay single after I got divorced, and I'm like, I'll stay single the rest of my life, and I'll be fine without anybody else. And I recognize there was a lack of love in that kind of scenario. It's like I have a capacity to love, but like I don't want to use it. So, in one sense, I said, you know what? It sounds better if I probably actually go try to sober date and actually love somebody and actually, bring what I can to a relationship. And so I asked my sponsor, and he suggested I talked to my grand sponsor, who's Gus in Nebraska, and he has a 3-page PDF, and it's called 12 Steps to Sober Dating, and it has various different items on there, and it's a document I use now when I work with people on sober dating, and it talks about just the basics of where to look for a date, how to interact during the date, how to stay sober, how to not do certain things, certain interactions, no foreplay during dating, and that waits until after you're married, and very practical steps that I found still even very hard for myself. I'll just share briefly. So I started sober dating with one of the steps talks about putting down a list of people. If you're interested in people, you can't think of like who to date or you're having problems, just write down a list and then ask God for boldness to call those people and start from the top and work your way down. My first list, and it says, go to a list of 10. And I was able to write down 5 names. One was a woman I was already kind of interacting with and hanging out with, and we were good friends. And then 2 of the other 4 women remaining were married, who I found out later on. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to write them off my list. I did try, and I asked the first person on the list if she would like to go to date. She didn't give me a clear answer. And then I asked her again about 2 months later, and she didn't give me a clear answer again. And my counselor, and I have used a counselor for ever since I started marriage counseling in June 2018. She told me, Stan, anything other than yes is a no. And I did not want to hear that. I was like, no, I don't believe that. Like, I was like, you know what? But that sounds pretty wise. Like, I guess I'll have to acknowledge that. So eventually I came to an agreement that yes, that she was saying no, it's okay. And we held on to a good relationship and friendship, and that was fine. Then I put together another list and eventually asked out one of the women on that list, and she said yes, and it worked out really well. One thing that was word of caution was that don't do any kind of things that appear to be or would actually be considered foreplay. So I talked to my sponsor one time about, it was only 2 months into the dating, and he said, Stan, that sounds like foreplay. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to lose my sobriety date. And so he said, I'm going to suggest we do a check meeting. And I go, a check meeting? I'm like, oh gosh, that sounds horrific. So what a check meeting is in SA, and they actually have a pamphlet on it. It's effectively a meeting where your sponsor is concerned about your sobriety, and you get to have people have crosstalk during the meeting, and they get to ask you certain questions. And at the end of that, I asked my sponsor, "Am I still sober?" He's like, "Yes. According to the White Book definition, you're still sober, but I'd watch what you're doing." I was like, "You know what?" And I was a day away from being 5 years sober. I was like, "Yeah, it's not worth throwing away my sobriety for this." I was like, "I'm just going to mind my P's and Q's and just follow my sponsors suggest and keep him apprised of my dating activities, the frequency of the dating, and how things were going." And eventually we got married, like I said, February 2023. And I've been grateful to actually be able to share that with other people as far as how to do sober dating. And I have a few other tools that also go along with that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it sounds like, your sobriety is vital to you. And, there's a phrase, a paragraph in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 19. And following up on this also, you are very service oriented. You're really involved in your meetings and everything like that. And what it says here is we feel that elimination of our drinking, our lust, is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs, and all that we do. So, talk to me a little bit about how you try and balance respective homes, occupations, and all you do with the service work and recovery work you do, Stan.
Yeah, so I recognizing that I have certain responsibilities in my life. So with my wife, I have a responsibility to be her husband, and that comes with all different kinds of things. With how I communicate with her, how I spend time with her, quality time, and what are my responsibilities in the relationship, and how we have those healthy interactions. So try not to be too domineering, try not to be too sheepish about things, try not to just kind of blow her off or just be like, no, you know what, I'm going to prioritize this over that. A lot of it is discussing to say, these are important things for me, so I need to make sure that, just like I talked with her about it today, I said, I'm going to be on this Rico 12 podcast, so I'm not going to be available at this time, and I ask for her to respect my boundaries, which are things to help me to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, my responsibilities, and just have that good interaction and good quality time, and making sure that I prioritize things as well, that I need to make sure that I'm going to be also working on different things when it comes to how I'm going to be involved with what I need to take care of in the household, and also when it comes to the my job, making sure that I'm going to show up to work on time, that I'm going to be respectful of people there at the office, that I'm not just going to spend all my time at work working on 12-step meetings, because theoretically I could do that. I could just be on Zoom meetings all day long and not get any work accomplished. So I got to be respectful of my time there, and how I interact with people, especially other female coworkers, not treat them as objects, not treat them disrespectfully. Don't treat them like they have the plague and I can't talk with them. And generally try to be friendly with people. And then also learn about in my job about like the kind of like the hierarchy of things. If I have a boss, I need to respect my boss. I need to learn, to understand his directions and to actually pay attention when they actually request something of me. One of my biggest problems in the past was that somebody would request something of me and I would completely ignore it, or just be like, not going to prioritize that. I'm going to do something else. And that was a thing that really got me in trouble many different situations. So I've recognized to say, you know what, let my yes be yes, my no be no. And if I can't get something done, I can ask for help. I can actually acknowledge something. I can say, hey man, I'm too, down, spun up with stuff, or I've got too much other stuff on my plate. I don't have enough time to do this, or I don't have the knowledge or the experience, or I need something. So I've been able to actually have good interactions with people and acknowledge my own limitations. And even when it comes to 12-step recovery, just recognize and say, like, you know what, I'm not the end all be all. God's got all the answers. So I just, can share my experience, strength, and hope, and go on from there.
Thanks for sharing that, Stan. You said something that intrigued me, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I'm going to ask a question from our audience here. Cheryl says, once step work is completed, what is your formula for continued work with your sponsees?
Good question. Yeah. So with my most recent sponsor, you finished 12th step, just about a week and a half ago. I told him, look into sponsoring others. He's already been at least a temporary sponsor for many people. And then also looking at doing service work and where he can be a part of the SA service structure and helping others. And then also just continuing to go to meetings. So a lot of it's just, like the topics here, keep doing meetings, keep, fresh, with, your daily practice of prayer, meditation, working the step work on a daily basis, doing your daily inventories, step 10 daily inventory, I think is very helpful. And I did that. I had a really long list I combined step 10 stuff from SA and Ecedon together. And I had like over like 20 different things on a daily basis. And I would do that every night. And it became a little bit laborious in one sense, but it was really helpful to me to see the patterns in my life. So I suggest, they continue to keep, taking personal inventory, prayer and meditation, and step 12, being of service to others, be of service at meetings, help out at meetings, look to be part of the service structure if you can. And then the regional events, looking to going to those different groups and traveling, looking to see what groups you can be a part of and what fellowships, you can continue to be a part of, especially even on Zoom.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. Love that. And, I find a lot of value in my own recovery is, if I'm going into a Zoom meeting, for example, it can be really easy to just sit in the back and not do anything. Now, a speaker meeting is a little bit different. That's what we do. We sit in the back, we listen, we pay attention, we may ask questions. But if I'm in a standard meeting where I can read or share or whatever, it's really easy for me to turn off the camera and just, not really participate. But jumping in and serving and participating has been a vital part in my own recovery. Do you have any other thoughts on that in your own experience?
Yeah, in my experience, when it comes to the different meetings, so I have a Filson bag, kind of like a little tote bag, and I have the majority of my literature. Actually, I have too much literature to fit all in that one bag. I also keep my Stepwork notebooks, other various different 12-step stuff in there. But having the literature is very key to having that. Granted, since I'm in 2 fellowships, I have a lot of literature. Ecedon doesn't have quite as much, but the cool thing about Ecedon uses SA, Ecedon, Al-Anon, and Ecedon literature. So in one sense, I was just thrilled. I was like, man, Ecedon uses all 4. I'm like, Yahtzee there. And so I try to be intentional when I'm on a meeting, especially a Zoom meeting, to help me to participate is try to be a part of one of the readings, whatever, an essay, we're doing the essay purpose, then, what's the sex alcohol, what is sexual sobriety, then, the problem and the solution, and then various other readings. So always try, not to force it, but, just to make myself available to do one of the readings during the meeting. And then also being timekeeper. Being timekeeper is also very helpful at meetings. That can help you want to stay and participate. And then being a part of the parking lots at the end of the meeting, talking and discussing with people is very helpful. And so I think having that stuff available and ready to go is a really great option. So that way you can participate. And then if somebody's asking, say, is anybody having suggestions for topics? And then you can bring up a topic, and that's a really great thing to be a part of a meeting.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Stan, you talked a lot, or you had a section of your talk where you talked a lot about step 11, prayer, meditation, listening. What does that practice look like to you today in your recovery, and how has that evolved over the years?
Yeah. So for me today, and how's it evolved, um, prayer work um, was really the stuff that I really got into the easiest, and found that prayers using like the 18 wheeler prayers. So in the essay white book, pages 157 through 168, they call it the 18 wheelers, different 18 steps on how to overcome your obsession of lust. And there's a handful of prayers in there, and they were super helpful. And so I would use those all throughout the day. And then the what I started doing was always usually kind of having the third step prayer as part of my prayer time in the morning and at night. So when I first wake up and hit my knees and do my prayers, and then when I before I go to bed, I was doing the third step prayer and doing various other prayers, praying for people. And also what I developed. So I'm a Christian believer, and I read the Bible, and I was really intrigued by in the Old Testament the book of Daniel, and it talks about Daniel would pray 3 times a day, and I really globbed onto that. And it said he was living in Babylon at the time, and he would face west towards Jerusalem in Israel. And I was like, I want to start doing that. So I made it a consistent thing where in the middle of the day, usually sometime between noon to 2 p.m., I would, find a quiet place, face west, and do a quick prayer. And I still do that today. And I call it my noontime prayer. And at the end of it, I ask God, what he would have me be. And the way I work in my brain is it starts with a letter from the alphabet, something A through Z. So if I said, God, would you have me be today? And he'd be, be awesome, or be, magnanimous, or, be dedicated, be diligent, some letter of the alphabet. And I'd be like, okay, that's really nice. So that's kind of how my prayer life goes. And today I do a lot of praying with my wife. So very intentional, especially before I go to bed. I pray with my wife, and I don't do just 12-step prayers, but I generally look at stuff to say, praying for others, praying for ourselves, praying for our families, coworkers, different situations. I currently do a prayer 3 times a day, these different decrees. This is through another thing I get involved with my wife through our church, decreeing these different things about, for others and for myself, and about health and wealth, and the state of Alaska, the state of the nation, and that kind of stuff. And just decree that, God's going to help us in these different things, and actually truly believing it. But just putting the good effort, say, what, my job is to ask, decree these things to happen, and then God's responsible for it. On the meditation side, I first started doing the Headspace app is what I use for meditation. And what it says in the essay white book is it suggests don't do prayer and don't do meditation before you get to step 11. And I did try it out, and I did see that the results weren't very good until I got to step 11. And it says specifically in the white book, says, because otherwise you're going to be listening to voices that might not be the best voices you want to listen to. And I didn't really hear anything demonic or anything crazy or something. I was telling me to lose my sobriety to do something crazy. But I found it's very helpful, and I suggest to my sponsees, don't start doing any meditation until you've gotten to step 11. Then be intentional about using meditation to listen to God, because a lot of times there's a lot of noise in your head. At least I experienced it in my mind, that just distracts me and doesn't want me to listen to God. I just wanted to do things. So that's kind of how I do prayer and meditation today.
Yeah, and I'd like to sit there for just another minute. You said a lot of time there's a lot of noise and distraction in my head. My brain is a noisy neighborhood, and uh, even when I'm practicing healthy meditation, sometimes it gets noisy in there. What are some strategies you use to quiet that noise?
Yeah, that has definitely been a thing. I've been in recovery almost 7 years now, and my brain can be very active, overly active, and so it's usually just by stopping what I'm doing and trying to do the next right action, break the cycle. If I'm stuck doing something right here, get up from my seat, go do something else, and try and break the cycle, and just kind of keep trying to break the cycle. Maybe make a phone call to somebody, go eat some healthy food, go do some exercise, go take care of a task that's my responsibility to get done. And yeah, a lot of that's just recognizing, and then also recognizing what I've imbibed during the day. What kind of media have I taken in? what kind of, negativity have I taken in from people? Have I been around people who've been admonishing me or, shaming me, or however they've been doing it, too high or too low? I don't need to get a big, inflated ego about myself. So if people have been really kind of, negatively affecting me, or the environments have been negatively affecting me, that can be a thing where I need to stop, pause, and pray, and try to get my brain kind of calmed down. Sometimes it's, go take a shower, go take a bath, go for a run, go do something that's a little bit different than where I'm at, and not just try and stay forced and stuck in the current situation I'm at. For me, brain activity can be a challenge. I've been very intentional over the last 2 years with my wife to try and help my brain activity through healthy diet and exercise, and what I get involved in, and try not to be too negative. There can be a lot of negativity in life, about someone's finances or something like that. I just try to say, you know what, I don't need to dwell on negative. I just recognize, say, if I see something, let's say I'm not happy with my bank account, with my debt load or something like that, I just find to try and take small chunks of things and say, what positive actions can I take today to try and move towards that getting healthy? And I don't obsess over it. I don't fixate on it, and I just leave it to God, and actually move on. So actually using, surrender to say, God, I give this to you, and then I move on to the next thing and see what I can be useful to other people.
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support, or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. Yeah, thank you, Stan. So, towards the beginning of your talk, I mean, you said, hey, went to counseling after, things started falling apart there, went to marriage counseling, and you, it sounded like from what you shared, from the very get-go, when a suggestion was made, you jumped in with both feet, and the desperation of a drowning man seemed to come pretty quickly once the realization happened that, hey, there's a problem here. How did you maintain that desperation of a drowning man throughout this entire, your recovery process, to keep doing, staying as connected as you are in the recovery world?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the gift of desperation, it's something a lot at times I see people, and anytime somebody's struggling with something, I'm going like, they generally guess they don't have the gift of desperation. And I try not to be, too judgmental towards that. I mean, I'll just kind of talk to my wife about it, usually just between us, and say, oh, well, sometimes, on people's health, they don't have the gift of desperation. They don't want to change. They don't want to do something. So for me, what started was I had this desperation. It's like, I did not want to lose my marriage. I was like, I'd rather be cut off and dead from my life than lose my marriage. And so that was the plan the first month, roughly. It ended up being about for the first 2 months. For the first month of counseling before SA, and then for the first month of SA, I was there to save my marriage. By August of 2018, I was like, you know what? Like, what I'm hearing from other people is like, if I don't knock this stuff off, I'm going to lose my life. I'm going to be just, not necessarily, dead, but like, I'm going to have a life where I'm like living on the street. I'm doing things that are harmful to my body. I have nothing. I have nobody. I'm just going to be a complete wreck. I'm like, I don't want that kind of life. And so I saw that gift of desperation about middle of August to say, you know what, I'm doing this to help save my life and for me to be a better person. And then at times, that gift of desperation kind of waxes and wanes. And sometimes you're more desperate than others for things. And but that was where I was like, in that sobriety definition, I said, I no longer want to have sex with myself. That sounds disgusting. I don't want to do that. And just I want to be away from that. I can't believe I was doing this for the last, it'd been 28 years, from age 11 to age 39. I'd been locked into this thing I didn't even know really existed. I kind of had an inkling that there was some issues with it, but like really honestly didn't have anything. So I was really desperate to want to stay sober. And then there was a member too. He had 4 years of sobriety in my home group, and he talked about going back out there and doing his acting out behaviors. And I was like, you can even think of doing this stuff 4 years into recovery? I'm like, that sounds crazy to me. I'm like, I better just find, a way for me to help stay sober the rest of my life, one day at a time, and not just, rest on my laurels. And even when I did leave the program for 9 months, I was desperate for sobriety. So I would hit my knees, do my prayers, ask God to keep me sober. But I found that that's not a long-term solution. I saw the gift of desperation, but not the desperation to actually want to recover. There's a difference between being sober and being in recovery. In recovery is where I want to be. Sober is not well, as they say in the SA fellowship. So if I'm just sober, I'm a sitting duck. I'm a target, but I got to be in recovery, and that means changing my attitude, behavior, my choices, and my thoughts, and getting closer to God.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a great place to wind this up. Thank you, Stan. Do you have any final words of wisdom before I go into closing readings?
Yeah. So my suggestion for people, if you're having issues with anything, whatever addiction, whatnot, I would suggest, focus on, the thing that's the most burning issue or fire immediately today. Put effort into that one. The other stuff can wait. But, doing the fellowship by going to meetings, doing the step work, making phone calls, listening to your sponsor's suggestions, it's all critical stuff. And there is a light on the other end of the tunnel. And there's not just, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And the journey is well worth it to continue to want to surrender to God and to just want to be a part of this fellowship and meet amazing people. And it's made me much more extroverted versus being introverted, because I was a huge introvert before recovery, and recovery has helped me to become much more extroverted, almost to a fault.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stan. Appreciate your share and appreciate you being here. If anybody else has any questions that they'd like to ask, we'll take that into the WhatsApp community. You can ask those questions there. Others can chime in with their experience, strength, and hope. You can also send an email to me at rico12pod@gmail.com if you'd like to get connected with Stan. Stan, do I have your permission to connect people who ask if they can talk to you with you through email?
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so email me. I'll get you connected with Stan if you would like to do that. And if you haven't already done so, please rate and review the podcast either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. It's a powerful way to work your 12th step and share recovery with others. Next Friday, we'll hear from another first-time RICO 12 speaker, Logan T., whose topic will be, I came to ABA for vanity, but stayed for sanity. And stay updated in our WhatsApp group, in our email list. And if you want to join that email list, send an email to me, rico12pod@gmail.com again. Now let's wrap up with the third step prayer. Stan, will you please lead us out with that third step prayer? You'll say it for us.
Yes.
Thank
all right,
you.
let's take a moment of silence for all those still sick and suffering in outside these rooms and all the different 12-step recoveries. Prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stan. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.